Hello, this is Chad Young, and this is my multimedia discussion for week 3 of MPA 540. We're talking about compensation this week. And before I got started on this, I kind of was looking at everybody else's presentation, just kind of seeing what everybody did, trying not to overlap too much. We saw a lot of great presentations. Brandon did a great presentation, and this little piece I loved about diminishing returns due to individual pay. There was also some really interesting stuff from Kristen on the equity theory, and I loved her evaluation on that. But when I came to Maribel's presentation, it was actually Dr. Kilt's question about, which reads, "It seems our elected leaders do not value public employees at times, so how do we keep public employees motivated to serve when they are not being fairly compensated and often are being criticized in the media and by elected officials?" I think this is something that we've all experienced at one point or another if you've been in public administration for any length of time, and it's a difficult question. It really does wear on employees, and I've experienced it myself. And what I'd like to talk about is that this week's topic really, if these problems are arising where people are complaining about their compensation or the relative compensation is becoming an issue, of course, generally speaking, our organizations need to evaluate our compensation systems and make sure that we have fair and equitable rates and all of that. That's great, but looking here at the 3 definitions offered by the text, it says compensation quantifies the individual-organization relationship, aligns individual and organizational objectives, and often causes discontent as people compare themselves with others. I think all 3 of those are absolutely true, but are exacerbated when an organization has larger problems. So I think we're missing a point. If these things are becoming an issue, the scope of the problem is not simply compensation. There's probably larger discontent within the organization. I'm speaking from my own personal experience at this point, not from papers or any studies, but I just know that in my own experience, the only time my compensation really becomes an issue for me is when I'm unhappy with my job. My experience a couple years ago, I was under a poor manager who'd kind of run a department into the ground. And in talking to my brother and complaining to my brother a lot, I was always talking about, I didn't get paid enough. They should be paying me more. I need to get paid more. And my brother kind of looked at me and said, Chad, you've never talked about pay that much. Not that money isn't important, but it's never been the biggest issue for you. And I stepped back and I thought about it, and I thought, yeah, I mean, the reason I'm concerned about my pay is because I am so unhappy at work that pay is pretty much the only reason I'm there. As we've discussed in other courses, we're usually holding value-based organizations as the gold standard. And in that case, that first bullet point, compensation quantifies the individual organization relationship. Okay, maybe quantifies it, but it doesn't necessarily define it. In a value-based organization, that relationship is more well defined by the common values the individual and the organization share. Same with aligns individual and organizational objectives. Again, in a value-based organization that is well designed and well operating well, this compensation should not be the primary force aligning the individual and organizational objectives. It certainly is a motivator. None of us are going to work for free. Some may, but most of us won't. So it certainly needs to be adequate. But again, in a value-based organization that is running optimally, the compensation should not be the biggest issue, and it should be there, and organizations surely need to be aware of it so that their employees feel that they're receiving adequate compensation and even appropriate compensation. But if employees are expressing disfavor with their compensation, there's probably other issues behind it. And that's my primary point here. Again, often causes discontent as people compare themselves with others. Absolutely. That is absolutely true. But they're going to spend less time on those issues if they're happy at their job.